Frozen whispers in the wind. The wind howled across the frozen planet. Sharp ice danced in the air, cutting like knives. Snow covered the ground, deep and cold. Everything was quiet, except for the wind. Mason walked slowly through the storm. His boots crunched on the ice. His breath turned to smoke in the freezing air. He was a human explorer searching for lost tech on old colony worlds. This planet was once home to aliens. Now, it was dead. Or so he thought. He stopped. He had heard something. A sound. A soft cry. He turned his head. Nothing. Just white snow and swirling wind. Then he heard it again. A whisper. Faint. Weak. Like a child crying. Mason frowned. He touched the side of his helmet. "Ava, replay that sound," his AI assistant answered in his ear. "Sound detected. Matches cry pattern of young life form. Direction, northwest." Mason's heart beat faster. Someone's alive out here? He moved fast. His suit kept him warm, but the storm was getting worse. Snow slapped against his visor. The sky was gray and heavy. But he followed the sound. After 10 minutes, he saw something strange, a small pile of black ashes on the snow. He knelt beside it. The ashes were soft and smelled like burnt cloth, alien cloth. There were pieces of metal, too, thin buttons, belts. This was once clothing burned on purpose. Mason's voice was quiet. Someone set fire to stay warm. Then he saw them, tiny footprints, bare feet, no shoes, no protection. The prints were deep in the snow, heading toward a broken hill of ice. Mason followed. He kept walking until he reached a sharp ridge. At the base of the hill, something moved. A small shape. He raised his hand. "Hello?" No answer. He stepped closer. It was a child. An alien child. She was curled in a ball, shaking. Her skin was pale purple, her fingers blue, her body wrapped in burned scraps. No shoes. No coat. Just torn cloth. She was freezing. Dying. Mason dropped to his knees. Hey, I'm not gonna hurt you. It's okay." The child didn't move. He touched her shoulder gently. She flinched but didn't run. Her eyes opened slowly, big, glowing, and full of fear. "Where's your family?" he asked. She tried to speak. Her lips were cracked. Her voice was dry and quiet. "Mama." Mason's heart broke. He opened his pack and pulled out a heat blanket. He wrapped it around the child and turned on the emergency warmer. "Stay with me, little one, I've got you." The child coughed. She clutched the blanket and looked up at him. Her eyes blinked slowly. She was tired. Too tired. Mason looked around. The storm was getting stronger. He tapped his helmet. "Ava, scan for shelter." Scanning. One possible structure detected. Distance 1.2 kilometers, direction east. He looked at the child again. She couldn't walk that far. She could barely move. "I'll carry you," he said softly. He lifted her carefully. She was light, too light. As he held her, her small hand grabbed his jacket. She was afraid, but she didn't let go. He moved fast through the storm, eyes narrowed, legs strong. Then he saw something in the snow ahead. Letters, scratched into the ice with a sharp stone. Alien writing. Ava translated it in his visor. "Help." Mason swallowed hard. Someone else had been here. Maybe still nearby. Maybe the mother. He looked down at the child. She was asleep in his arms. Or unconscious. He had to find that shelter, fast but in the wind behind him. He heard it again. A whisper. Not from the child. From the storm. From the snow. He turned quickly. Nothing. Just ice. But that whisper had sounded like a woman. A voice calling. "Mama." Ashes and footprints. Snow fell harder now. The wind screamed, louder, like it was angry. Mason pushed forward through the white storm, holding the small alien girl close to his chest. She didn't move. Her head rested on his shoulder. Her skin was ice cold. Her breathing was soft, too soft. He had to hurry. His AI, Ava, guided him through the storm. Structure ahead, 800 meters. Mason looked around. No trees, no lights, only ice and silence. Then something strange happened. He stepped into a clear area where the snow had been blown away, and there, he saw more ashes, black, cold, dead. But this was different. In the ashes there were tiny handprints, children's handprints, and a broken chain. Mason's eyes narrowed. They were tied here. He looked around. More footprints. Not just one set, 3, maybe 4. Small feet, no shoes, and adult feet too, bigger, stronger. The adult steps led deeper into the blizzard. Mason followed. Every step told a story. The children moved slowly. Some crawled, some stumbled, and the adult, the mother, had circled them, over and over, protecting them. But now the footprints stopped, right at the edge of a snow-covered pit. Mason looked down. In the pit, under broken wood and metal panels, he saw something, a shelter, half buried. He climbed down carefully, holding the child tight. Inside the hole, the temperature was a little better. Not warm, but less deadly. He placed the child on the ground and started the portable heater. She didn't wake. He gave her a few drops of water. Her lips twitched. She made a weak sound. Then, a voice spoke, not from Ava, from behind him. Who? Mason turned quickly. In the corner of the shelter, under broken blankets and pieces of cloth, a figure moved. A woman. Alien. Thin. Pale. Bare skin. Covered in frost. She tried to sit up but fell back down. Her voice was dry and broken. My daughter. Mason rushed to her side. I found her. She's safe. She's right here. The woman's eyes opened wide. She reached out with trembling fingers. Her hand found the child's foot. Her lips shook. Warm. Mason nodded. She's alive, but barely. You too. We need help. The woman tried to speak again, but her body failed her. Her eyes closed. She passed out. Mason looked around the shelter. There were signs of struggle, burned clothes, empty food packs, a dead heater, scorch marks on the walls, and in the corner, 2 small bundles, covered in cloth. Still, Mason's stomach twisted. He walked slowly to the bundles. He knelt down, pulled the cloth back. 2 children, frozen, lifeless. The woman had saved one, but lost the others. He bowed his head for a moment. The storm outside kept screaming, but inside, it was silent. Only pain remained. Mason stood up. He had to do something. Fast. He tapped his helmet. Ava, signal rescue. Ava answered. Signal. Jammed. Storm interference. He looked at the mother and daughter. Then we survive, alone. He took out all his gear, used emergency fuel to start a real fire, cut up his own coat to wrap around the mother, laid the girl next to her. For hours he fed the fire, watched over them. Finally, the child moved. She opened her eyes, saw her mother. Beside her she smiled just a little and whispered, Mama. The mother stirred too. She reached out blindly, touched her child's hand, and for the first time in days, the ice inside them began to melt. Mason sat back. He had come for old tech. He had found a story of love, loss, and fire. But this wasn't the end. He still didn't know what happened before he arrived. Who were they running from? Why was the shelter hidden? And what happened to the people who built it? Because just as Mason closed his eyes for a short rest, he heard a distant sound. Not wind, not whispers, but something heavy, moving in the snow, getting closer. The mother's last fire, The fire crackled inside the broken shelter. Orange light danced across the cold metal walls. The storm outside still roared, but in here, it was quiet. For now. Mason sat beside the two aliens, the child and her mother. They were alive, but only barely. The mother had not spoken again. She lay still, eyes closed, her chest rising slowly. Her skin was raw from frost, her body weak, but her arms were wrapped around the child tightly, like a shield. The child clung to her. She was silent, but not asleep. Her eyes, large and glowing faint blue, watched Mason. She didn't speak, but her gaze asked the question. Why? Why had he helped? Mason didn't know how to answer. He only knew this. No one else was coming. Not yet. The storm blocked all signals, and he was running. Out of fuel, water, and time, he reached for his emergency log pad. And as he wrote, the AI translated and played the message aloud for the little girl to hear. I found you in the snow. You were almost gone. Your mother gave everything for you, even her clothes, even her warmth. She burned herself to keep your fire alive. The child blinked slowly. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She was stronger than most humans Mason had met. Then something caught Mason's attention. In the back corner of the shelter, there was a symbol scratched into the metal wall, faint, made with a sharp rock. He stepped closer and brushed snow away. The symbol was circular like a sun with fire coming out of it. Below, it more alien writing. Ava translated, "Do not return, they are still out there." Mason's breath caught. Still out there? Who? He walked to the edge of the shelter door and looked out into the storm. Nothing. Just blowing snow. But he felt it. Something. Watching. Waiting. He turned back and checked the fire. It was dying again. No more fuel. He only had one thing left to burn. His own gear. He pulled out parts of his suit, armor padding, extra fabric, tools. One by one he fed them into the flame. The child flinched at first, then stared. She understood. Mason was giving his safety to protect them, just like her mother did. He smiled gently at her. Your mother gave you her fire. Now I give mine. Time. Passed slowly. Then the mother's eyes opened, just a little. Her voice was cracked. Is she... She's safe, Mason said softly. She's warm. You did it. The mother tried to sit up. Failed. Others... gone. I could not. Mason knelt beside her. You saved her. That matters. She looked at him closely. Now, a human. Strange to her, yet kind. Why? He didn't answer with words. He just placed the fire starter crystal into her hand, the same one she had dropped outside. He had found it earlier, buried near the ashes. She stared at it, then closed her hand tight. Tears ran down her frozen cheeks. Mama, the child whispered. The mother looked at her, then pulled her into her arms. For the first time, the fire wasn't the only thing warming them. But then, the ground shook. Very softly. Once. Then again. Mason froze. He looked toward the door. Snow fell. From the shelter ceiling. The child clutched her mother tighter. The mother's face changed. Fear. Not of the cold, but of something else. They come, she whispered. They found us. Who? Mason asked. She pointed to the symbol on the wall, the fire sign. Hunters. Suddenly, a light flashed outside. Not from the sky, from a machine, a ship. No engine sound. Silent. Dark. It passed above, slowly, looking, searching. Mason pulled the fire out with his hand, crushing the flames. They sat in total darkness now. Only breaths. Only silence. Above, the ship stopped. Hovering. Waiting. Mason reached for his weapon, barely powered. The mother held her child tight. The little girl looked at the human. Her tiny voice broke the silence. "Don't let them take Mama." Mason stared at the door and nodded once. Hope wears no coat. The shelter was dark. The fire was dead. Mason sat with his back to the wall, holding his weapon tight. It wasn't much, just a sidearm with half a battery. But it was all he had. Outside, the silent ship hovered in the storm. No lights now. No noise. Just the slow, steady hum of something watching. The alien mother held her child close. She said nothing, but her body trembled. Not from cold, from fear. Mason whispered, "Who are they?" The mother answered in a weak voice, "Hunters. They don't leave survivors." The little girl hugged her tighter. Mason's jaw clenched. He wasn't a soldier. Not anymore. He was just a scavenger, looking for old tech, trying to survive. But now, he had something worth fighting for. He looked at his gear. Nothing left to burn. Nothing left to give. Except himself. He moved quietly to the edge of the shelter and peeked outside. Snow flew in thick waves. The storm was loud, but not loud enough to hide the soft thump of boots in the distance. They were coming. Figures in the snow. Tall. Covered in thick black armor. Glowing red eyes. No voices. No emotions. Just machines and skin. The hunters. Mason turned to the mother. "You have to run." She shook her head slowly. "I can't. My legs." The child looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "I'll stop them," he said. The mother's eyes widened. "You'll die." Mason gave a sad smile. "Maybe, but not before I give you time." He opened his jacket and took out a small heat battery. He pressed it into the mother's hand. "Follow the tunnel behind the shelter," he said. "I found it earlier. It leads to the cliffs. Stay low. Stay quiet." The mother stared at him. "You're not one of us." "No," he said, "but I believe in life. I believe in hope." Then he looked at the little girl. "And hope doesn't wear a coat." Mason stepped out into the storm. He walked toward the hunters, one step at a time, his weapon ready, his heart steady. The snow crunched under his boots. Then, silence. The hunters saw him. They stopped. One pointed. The others raised their weapons. Mason fired first. One shot. Bright blue. Hit the chest of the nearest hunter. It stumbled, but didn't fall. Mason ran sideways, drawing them away from the shelter. He jumped over ice, ducked behind rocks, shot again. They chased. His plan was working. Until, click, his weapon died. Battery empty. Mason stood alone in the snow, breathing hard. The hunters closed in. He looked up at them. 4 red lights. 4 cold machines. No mercy, no soul. Then, boom. An explosion rocked the ice nearby. One of the hunters flew backward, smoking. Mason turned fast. From the cliff above, a light shone. A rescue ship. Human. Military. Finally, he dropped to the ground as bullets rained from the sky, hitting the remaining hunters. Within seconds, it was over. The hunters were dead. The storm still screamed, but now, hope screamed louder. Mason was pulled aboard the rescue ship. The commander looked at him. "You called for help?" Mason pointed to the shelter. "Not for me, for them." The rescue team rushed to the shelter. They found the tunnel, and inside, they found the mother and child. Alive. Safe. Together. Hours later, inside the warm ship, Mason sat across from them. The mother had new clothes now. The child held a cup of warm liquid in her small hands. The mother looked at Mason. "You gave everything, even your coat. Why?" Mason smiled softly. "Because someone once saved me too." She nodded slowly, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small crystal. She placed it in Mason's hand. It glowed faintly, a symbol of her people, of thanks, of trust. The rescue ship lifted off. The storm below faded, and in the quiet hum of the ship, a bond had been formed, not by blood, not by language, but by sacrifice. Frozen aliens, burning eyes. The rescue ship flew high above the snow-covered planet. Warmth filled the cabin. Clean lights, fresh clothes, food, safety. But Mason couldn't relax. He sat by the window looking out at the frozen land below. His coat was gone. His weapon was gone. And part of him was still in that shelter, with the ashes and the silence. Behind him, the little alien girl slept quietly on a padded bench. Her mother sat close, awake now, watching Mason. She hadn't said much since the rescue, but her eyes, still tired, still filled with pain, never left him. Then the ship's commander walked in. "Trouble," he said. Mason stood. "What kind?" The commander showed him a screen. "We ran a scan of the valley where we found you. We picked up heat signatures and under the ice." Mason leaned closer. The scan showed dozens of shapes. Still, silent, but not dead. Not yet. Mason whispered, "They're underground?" The commander nodded. "Buried or hiding? Maybe both." Mason looked at the mother. "Do you know about this?" She closed her eyes slowly. "Yes," she said. "There were more of us. When the hunters came, many ran below. Into the old tunnels. Into the cold. They were too weak to escape. I stayed above, with my daughter." Mason's chest tightened. "You think they're still alive?" She nodded, frozen, sleeping, waiting for light. The commander shook his head. "We don't have orders to save them. Our job was to retrieve survivors. You three. That's it." Mason frowned. "You're just going to leave them?" The commander's face was hard. "It's not our war." Mason looked out the window again, and he saw it. A red glow. Faint. Far below the snow. Burning eyes. Watching, moving. Suddenly, the ship shook. Alarms rang. "Warning," Ava's voice called. "Unidentified projectile, impact imminent." Boom. The ship tilted. Sparks flew. Lights blinked. Everyone fell. Mason grabbed the child, shielding her as the ship dropped fast. The mother screamed and reached for them. The commander shouted, "We've been hit." Something launched from below. Mason's heart pounded. It's not over. The ship crashed into the ice, not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to trap them. Twisted metal. Smoke. Fire. The cold came in again. Fast. Mason stood up slowly. His leg hurt. Blood on his forehead. But he had no time to stop. The child was crying, softly. The mother held her, trying to stay calm. The commander groaned. "Systems down, no signal, we're grounded." Mason looked outside, and what he saw chilled him more than the storm ever could. Figures, walking in the snow. Not machines. Not hunters, aliens, frozen skin. Glowing red eyes. But not alive. Not dead. Something in between. The mother whispered, "They were my people, once. But the cold, the darkness, changed them." Mason stared. "You mean, they are still alive, but lost. Their hearts frozen, their minds broken. Now they burn." The red-eyed aliens came closer. No weapons, just hunger. For warmth, for life, for anything. The commander grabbed a gun. "We'll fight." Mason shook his head. "We can't win with firepower." "Then what do you suggest?" the commander snapped. Mason looked at the mother, then at the child, then at his own chest. His, broken armor, his half-dead tech. He took a deep breath. "We melt them," he said. The mother looked up. "What?" "Not with heat," Mason said, "with memory." He walked outside, into the cold, alone. The frozen aliens saw him. They stopped. They sniffed the air. He raised his hand, and then he pulled something from his belt. The glowing crystal, the One the mother had given him, a symbol of family, of life, of love. The red eyes blinked. The alien stepped closer, slow, careful, and one of them whispered, "Home." Behind Mason, the mother and child stepped out too. The child held out her hand. The closest alien knelt before her, touching her fingers, not to hurt, but to remember. Tears fell down the mother's cheeks. They still know us. Inside the ship, the lights flickered back on. The commander whispered, What just happened?" Mason said softly. "They were frozen, but not gone, just waiting for hope. A human's fire." The ice didn't feel cold anymore, not because the temperature had changed, but because something else had begun to warm the air. The frozen ones, those red-eyed aliens, stood still now, surrounded the crashed ship. They didn't attack, they didn't growl, they simply stared, and in their eyes, something had changed. Not rage, not hunger, but confusion. Memories. The alien child stepped forward. She held the crystal her mother once gave Mason. Its soft glow pulsed in her small hand like a heartbeat. The frozen aliens stared at the light. One of them, tall, skin cracked, eyes dull, slowly dropped to its knees. It reached out with a shaking hand and touched the crystal. Then it whispered something. A name. The mother gasped. That was my brother. Inside the broken ship, the commander paced. This is not natural. That glow, it's not science. Mason didn't answer. He stood at the open door, watching the impossible. He had seen war. He had seen machines. He had seen death. But he had never seen the dead remember who they once were. Ava's voice spoke softly in his ear. Emotional signals increasing. External. Temperatures remained below freezing. Internal warmth rising due to unknown interaction. Mason whispered, "Not unknown. That's love." But the peace didn't last. The ground shook again. This time louder. Heavier. Far away, something massive moved. Snow blasted into the air. From beneath the ice, an ancient war machine rose. Black metal, sharp like bones, glowing from deep within. The true cause of the transformation, the hunter's core, still alive, still feeding, still hunting. The frozen aliens turned toward it and began to grow wild, twisting in pain, eyes glowing red again. The mother screamed, "It's calling them back." Mason knew what he had to do. "I need to burn it," he said. The commander shouted, "With what? We have no weapons left." Mason turned to Ava. "Run all emergency power to my core suit battery." Ava answered, "Warning. Doing so will disable all life support functions." Mason didn't blink. "Do it." He stepped outside. The storm was still thick. The wind cut hard. But inside Mason, fire burned. The suit glowed. Lights flickered across his arms and chest. He ran toward the rising machine. The ice cracked below him. The mother shouted his name. The child cried out. But he didn't stop. He ran faster. The war machine saw him. Lasers charged. Guns moved. But Mason leaped across the ice, sliding under falling debris. He reached its core. The crystal in his hand still glowed. He stabbed it into the machine's side, deep, and pressed his chest to it. Ava spoke softly one last time. "Goodbye, Mason." Boom! Light exploded from the center. Not fire, not heat, but warmth, real warmth, from the heart. The light spread across the ice. It hit the frozen aliens, and instead of burning them, it melted the frost around their minds. They gasped, collapsed, then opened their eyes, clear, blue, alive. The machine shattered behind them. Mason's body lay still beside it. His suit cracked, smoke rising. The mother and child rushed to him. She held his face, cried. The child whispered, "Please." Then something strange happened. The crystal on his chest, her people's gift, began to glow again. Soft, bright, and from it, a pulse, a breath. Mason's eyes opened. Barely, he smiled. "You're safe." And then he closed them again. But this time, with peace. They carried him back to the ship. The frozen ones, now awakened, stood in rows. Not soldiers, but survivors. And at the front stood the little girl, with the crystal in her hand, and Mason's coat around her shoulders. The bond that melts ice. The ice no longer screamed. The storm had passed. Snow still covered the world. But the silence felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful, alive. The rescue ship sat on a flat ridge above the valley. Smoke still rose from its hull, but inside, warmth filled every corner. Dozens of once frozen aliens now moved through the ship, helping each other, breathing slowly, remembering who they were. Some still cried. Others stared at the stars through the windows, eyes full of wonder. They had been buried under ice for so long, and now they were free. The little girl walked quietly through the hallways. She wore Mason's coat, far too big for her small frame. The sleeves hung past her hands, the edges dragged on the floor, but she refused to take it off. In her hand, she still held the crystal. It pulsed gently with a soft blue light, like it was still alive, like Mason was still with her. In the medical bay, Mason lay still, alive, but asleep. His chest rose slowly. Machines helped him breathe. The alien mother sat beside him, holding his hand. She hadn't left his side, not once. The commander entered quietly. "We'll be taking off soon," he said. "The new rescue ship is 2 hours away." The mother nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. He looked at Mason. He gave more than anyone, even for people he didn't know. She smiled faintly. "He didn't see us as different." "No," the commander said. He didn't. Later, as the ship lifted gently into the sky, the little girl stood at the window looking down. The valley below was no longer a place of death. It was a place of memory, a place of fire and love. A few days passed. Mason opened his eyes, slowly, blinking, against the soft light. He saw her first, the little girl, sleeping in a chair beside him, Mason's coat still wrapped around her. He smiled weakly. Still wearing that thing? Her eyes opened fast. She jumped up and hugged him, not with words, but with warmth. The mother came in and knelt beside the bed. She didn't speak. She just placed something in his hand. The crystal. It still glowed, but now it pulsed in rhythm with Mason's heartbeat. Later, the alien survivors stood in front of the new ship. They were going to a new world now, a place where they could rebuild, restart, and live without fear. Mason stood at the ramp, still weak, still healing, but standing. The little girl ran back to him one last time. She reached up and touched his face. Then she gave him something. Not the crystal. Her own necklace, woven from old. Threads and bits of metal, handmade, worn, but full of meaning. Mason bent down and tied it around his wrist. "Thank you," he said. She didn't answer in words. She simply smiled. The ship rose into the stars. Mason watched until it disappeared. The wind blew again across the ridge, cold, but somehow it didn't bite like before. Because now he knew something deeper. Stronger than ice. Stronger than war. The bond between souls who choose to care. Even when they don't have to. Even across stars. Even without words. Later, when Mason returned to his home planet, people asked him what he found out there. He always gave the same answer. "I found fire in the cold, and a child who showed me what it means to be human." The end.